Hi everyone, welcome to another DeltaDNA webinar. This is a getting started webinar, so today we're going to be taking you through your early steps on the DeltaDNA platform, show you how to sign up for an account, add a game to that account, download an SDK and start sending some data to DeltaDNA, and then how to start running QA against your data, and from there moving on to starting to run some analysis. So we're going to take probably about 45 minutes to an hour today to run through some of these early steps, and after that you'll be in good shape to start sending data of your own. So the first place we're going to start is on the DeltaDNA portal, and this video, we will record this will go up on the documentation website in the next day or two. So if you don't get to watch all of it right now, you can come back and watch it again later. The first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to sign up for an account on the DeltaDNA website, and we'll just do that by hitting the sign up button. And as we go through this, if you want to pose any questions as we're going through the demo, by all means use the chat panel or the questions panel on GoToWebinar, and Louise or I will hopefully be able to pick up your questions and answer them right here and now. So the first thing I'm going to do is going to sign up for an account by hitting the sign up button on the DeltaDNA website. I'm just going to use a fake address for this. And do that, and that should be enough. I just hit that and agree to the terms. Just give it a second while it signs up and creates an account, and it will now have sent an email address to that account, so I can actually validate it or verify the email address. So let me just check. Might need to give that a second or two to arrive. I'll just double check I actually used Delta. Double checking for spelling mistakes. There we go. So I click on the link to verify my account, and it's going to ask me to create a password. And we can now proceed and log in to DeltaDNA. Okay, so we are now in. We've now created an account on DeltaDNA, and the first thing it's going to show me before I even add any games, it's giving me the opportunity to take a quick walk through the platform and show me point out a few things of interest. It will do this from a variety of different aspects depending on your role. So if you want to see the platform from the point of view of a producer or developer, analyst, or a marketer, hit one of these buttons and you can take a look at what the platform can do for you, and it will take you through 4 or 5 screens just pointing out a few features and areas you might want to go and have a look at, and places you want to start. You can close this down and come back to it later, or you can even go back and view it as different personas just to see what the platform can do for you. We're just going to close this for now though, but if you want to come back to that at a later date, just hit this checkbox down here and it will show the welcome screen again. This page we've been dropped onto, this is essentially our account page. So on this page we'll add our own games, and you'll also notice that we've been given access to a game already. There's a demo account on here that you can drill into and have a look around and see what a populated game actually looks like, and see what some of the tools on the platform can do for you. So we will come back and have a quick look at that shortly, but for now let's just dive straight in there and add our own game. So I'm going to click this add your first game button. Equally, I could just hit the add game button up here. and it's going to ask us a few things about our game. So let's just call this webinar demo game and give it a nice description. And we'll have a puzzle game and we'll give it an icon. And that's really all I actually need to do at this stage. I could put my company URL in if I want, and these two buttons at the bottom there, you should actually set these correctly at this stage. What they do, when we receive in-app purchase revenue from your game, we'll keep track of which currency it comes in at, the spending comes in on, whether it's Canadian dollars, US dollars, etc. But when you want to look at charts and graphs of your revenue, we'll harmonize that into a single currency view just so you can actually see the total revenue in a single currency. This drop down here is simply letting you choose which currency you would like these charts displayed in. The underlying data will still be there in the original currencies, and you can map those and display those if you want, but this just makes it kind of easier to take a view on. And this one, the GeoIP location, if you want to track what countries your players are playing from, just check that and we'll automatically populate that based on the IP address that player data comes in through. So let's hit the save button, and that's going to actually start setting up our game on the platform. As the text here says, this can take a couple of minutes because there's actually quite a lot of stuff going on in the background. We're creating database tables, building out a basic event schema for your game. So there's all sorts of things going on in the background. We can go away and do other stuff and give that its own time to finish. So we'll just do exactly that. I'm going to click on the home button here and just show you a few other things while that's working away. So this is us back at the root of our account. You can see that we have some buttons down here where I can actually control the account. We can invite other users onto the account. So if I hit the Manage Users tab, you'll see that there is only the one user in the account at the moment. That's the one we just set up, and I am the account owner. I can invite other users into the account, and when I do that, I can choose what roles and permissions those new users are allowed to perform. Are they going to be new account owners, or are they going to be restricted in some way? And as I add multiple games, you can control who gets to see, who can log in and see which games, and you can even control down to a tool level which tools within the platform on each game different users have access to. So a multi-role, multi-function roles and permission system in there. We can see the game demo, it has now set up our game. It's ready to be used. There will still be some other stuff going on behind the scenes in the setup, so it won't be completely finished yet. This will populate out a bit further in a couple of minutes, and you'll start getting more displays in it. But let me take you for a quick tour around the demo account while we're waiting for that to do that. You'll see on the demo account here, we've actually got two different lines. We've got a live and a development line. What this is referring to, with each game that you add to the platform, we're going to give you a separate environment for all your developments and testing data, and one for your live production data. And this lets you keep all your tests and QA data completely separate from the production data. It keeps things nice and clean. So what we're going to do, we've selected the live strand, and we're just going to click on this door, and that will take us right into the live data for this demo game. And this is giving us a view of what a game looks like with data flowing in it. We can toggle backwards and forwards between the development and live environments at any time. And we've got a navigation menu down the left here that contains all the different tools within the platform. I'll not go through each of these in great detail in this video. There are plenty of other videos on the documentation site that actually go into the tools one by one and show you how to get the most out of them. But just a quick scan through them, what you'll find is the tools on the left here gets increasingly more sophisticated as you travel down the navigation pane. At the top, we have custom dashboards and standard dashboards that let you see a quick overview of what's going on in your game. And you can add your own custom dashboards in here, as many of them as you want, and set them up as email reports, or just set them up so you can log in and view them. So complete flexibility about the kinds of charts and visualizations you can display in your custom dashboard area. There's also a measure charting system. This is a basic standardized charting system that's common across all games. And what you'll see as we run through this video today is that you will be able to start populating a lot of the charts in this very, very quickly and easily. There's a common core set of events that pretty much every game will be common to pretty much every game, and they populate out the charts in this system. And these charts can all be filtered by player start date, cohorts, the location the players are playing from, what platform they're playing on, whether it's iOS or Android, and you can even filter based on the acquisition channel, or you can build your own custom player segments for filtering. The next set of tools down are where things start getting really fun, because the measure and dashboards will show you kind of trends in behavior. It's within the analyze tools that you really start being able to dig right down to user level data and understand exactly what players are doing and kind of get a really good insight into what's going on in your game. And these tools are all running SQL queries directly against the analytics database, and as you can see from that one, they're super quick. So the kind of tools you've got in here, you've got nice simple drag and drop tools like the slice and dice tool, there's funnel tools, there's even tools where you can write SQL analysis queries and enter them just as SQL, and you can connect third-party tools like Tableau and R to the data warehouse as well. There's some predictive tools and then tools for building out your own custom player segments. The next set of tools are the campaign tools. So this is where you've identified player segments and you want to actually start targeting them with campaigns, special offers, or even send push notifications to bring people back into the game. And the final part of the toolkit, which we'll actually be touching on in our game, is the setup section. So in here you've got all your event management tools and QA tools for both event management and campaigns. So that's a quick view of what a completely set up game will look like. If we go back to the root of our account, we can actually start playing with the game we've set up now. So let's do exactly the same. Let's drill into our game. We don't want to start in the live environment. We actually want to start in the development environment. So just click on Dev, and it's telling us here, please integrate to get data flowing. So let's just hit that button. And this is taking us to a special dashboard. This appears in the custom dashboard area, and this is just a special dashboard that gives you kind of at a glance view of how you're getting on with your integration. At the moment we're set to 0% because we haven't done anything yet. So the first thing we want to do is to download the SDK and get some events flowing. And the links in this top section are really just showing a link off to the documentation portal, which you can get to in a couple of ways. You can click this link here, or if you look up here at help and support, that help button also takes you to our documentation portal. So there's lots of information there on the SDKs and instructions on how to use them. So let's just click that download SDK link, and for the purposes of the demo today we're going to be doing everything in Unity. So let's just click the Unity SDK button, and there's a whole set of documentation on how to use the Unity SDK here and a download link to it. The SDK is hosted on GitHub, so if I click on this link it'll take me off to GitHub. You can even just turn up at GitHub and search for DeltaDNA and it will find the SDK. So let's just download that, and you can do that just by hitting this download zip. And I've actually already done that. I've got a copy of it sitting on my desktop, so I'm not bother doing that at the moment. But if you download that and unzip it, then we'll be able to add the SDK into our game. So let's just go back to here. The other thing on this page, the other link, is to the game details page. You can get to this in a couple of ways as well. You can either click on this game details link, or if you just actually click on the name of your game, it'll always take you back to the game details page. So let's just do that. And this page contains a few details about your game. It gives you environment keys that are actually going to be used to direct your data into one of those two environments, whether it's the development or live environment. And there's notes of the URL that you should be sending your data to. But we're going to use an SDK, so it's going to do quite a lot of that heavy lifting for us. So we're just going to click on one of these sample code buttons here, and because we're using Unity, we'll be able to click on the Unity sample code button and copy and paste that and actually use that to start up the SDK in our game. So now that we've downloaded the SDK and we've got our startup code, let's fire up Unity and get cracking. So if I switch across to Unity, I've got Unity sitting waiting here for a new project. So let's just give this a name, webinar demo. We're going to create the project. This will just take a second or so for Unity to fire up. And now we can actually go right ahead and import the DeltaDNA SDK into Unity. So we import the SDK as a custom package. I downloaded this to my desktop earlier, so let me just go back, and it's in Unity Master. And here's the SDK package here. You'll see when you download the SDK, there's actually two packages in it. There's the SDK itself. This is the Analytics SDK. There's also a separate Smart Ads extension package. We'll not touch on that today, but there's going to be another webinar next week where we'll actually go into the Smart Ads SDK and show you how easy it is to get ads, interstitial ads and rewarded ads running in your game. So that we'll leave that one for another day, but at the moment just click on the DeltaDNA Analytics SDK, import it, and then just say yes to everything that the import window suggests. And what this is going to do, this is going to import all the SDK files and plugins, and it'll all be ready for us to use. I'm also now going to add a game object, an empty game object to my project, and I'm going to add a script to that so I can start up the SDK. So let's add a new script and we'll call it webinar. And let's open up that script. Try clicking it a bit harder. Come on, Visual Studio. Got there in the end. So, should still have my code from here sitting in my clipboard. So let's just paste that right in over the top of that code that Unity generated. So I'm just going to delete the Unity code and paste in my code from the DeltaDNA game details page. One thing I will need to change, the game details page has given me code for a class called myBehavior, but I actually called my class webinar. So we're going to have to just rename that like that. And now we could just jump back to Unity and run that straight away. What I'm going to do though, in preference, I'm going to add a couple of other things to this first, because I want to be able to see a bit more detail on what the SDK is doing. So I'm going to turn debugging on. So let's say DeltaDNA instance set logging level. And we're going to set the logging level to, and there's an enumeration for this, DeltaDNA logger level debug. And I'm also going to tell the SDK what build of my game we're using, because it's also always really good to track what version of the game your players are playing, in case, because you likely see changes in behavior based on different build versions. So DeltaDNA instance again, and we're going to set the client version parameter equal to version 1.00. And that, believe it or not, is enough to actually fire up the SDK and start sending events to DeltaDNA with as little as that. So let's jump back into Unity and run our lovely new game. And what you'll see in the console here, we've already got some output. Let's just have a closer look at that and see what... Oh, come on. There we go. A closer look at that and see what it's saying. So what that's telling us is the DeltaDNA SDK started. It assigned a new user and gave them a user ID. It started a new player session, and then it created 3 events. It created a new player event, a game started event, and a client device event. It started uploading them and then was perfectly happy. It succeeded. So that's all good. So let's just get rid of that, put it down there. So that's good. We've sent our first few events up to DeltaDNA, and we will be able to go and check those and have a look at them in a minute or two in one of the QA tools. But first of all, let me just show you the code again in a little bit more detail. So really all we did, other than setting the logging and the client version, all we actually did there was start the DeltaDNA instance with the Start SDK. We told it where to send the data and what environment key to use, and this code was automatically given to us on the game details page, but we could have probably figured it out ourselves, because there's the environment keys there for dev and live, and there's the URL in there. Let's now actually pop into our game environment again. And you'll see at this stage, this looks a little bit different from the demo game we looked at. A lot of the navigation menu is missing because there's no data there to actually analyze yet. And it could take an hour or two from us setting up and sending our first events before all these other navigation options actually pop up and there's some data to look at. But at the moment, the setup section will be populated. So we can go and have a look at that. And in particular, we want to look at the Manage Events section, because we saw the SDK automatically generating 3 events there. And what the system's actually done, when we added our game, it's automatically added an event schema for us with all these different events in it. And these are the ones that will populate all these standard measure dashboards that you saw in the demo game. Some of these events are actually automated ones that the system will generate itself, so you don't need to worry about. And some of them will look very normal and standard kind of things. So here's the new player event in our event schema. Here's the game started event and the client device event. Those are the 3 events that the SDK has sent all by itself. And if we click on any of these events, you can actually see what the structure of the event will look like. Every event follows a common structure with an event name, timestamp, user ID, etc. And then there'll be a block of parameters that will contain the actual details about the event. Some of these parameters can be optional, like this client version one that we're going to use. It's optional, but there'll be others in there that will be set to required. And we do run validation on your events as they arrive, and we will validate against this schema to stop junk data getting in and making a mess of the system. We'll come back to the event manager and look at it in a bit more detail shortly, but at the moment the next tool we want to look at is actually the event browser. This is a great little QA tool that you can use to watch events coming in, and the events that we sent when we ran the SDK there should, fingers crossed, have arrived by now. Haha, famous last words. It can take up to 5 minutes. Quite often it's a lot quicker, but it can take up to 5 minutes before your events turn up in here. Not to worry, we'll go and record some other events and we'll come back to this in another minute or two. So we'll go back to the event manager, and the next thing I want to do is actually, rather than having to send these automated events, we want to do something a little bit different and create an event or create an event ourselves in the SDK and send it. So the event I'm going to send is this mission started event. So let's just have a quick look at the structure of that. This is going to be looking for a few required parameters. It's going to want to know the name of the mission we're playing and whether it's a tutorial mission or not. But the rest of the parameters in there are optional, other than the ones that the SDK is doing itself. So let's go ahead and create a mission started event in code and send that to DeltaDNA. So let's just create something for that. Let's create a new method. And in that new method, we want to build some event parameters. And we're going to do that by using a special helper object called a game event, and give it a name. And the event we were wanting to send was a mission started event. And we're now going to add some parameters onto that. So let's say add a parameter called mission name as mission 1. Oops. And let's add another parameter onto that because we know there was a tutorial parameter. So what we're going to do is inverted commas is tutorial false, and we'll just leave that as it is. We'll just leave it as simple as that, a really simple event. And the next thing we want to do, now that we've actually built our event, we want to record it, and we do that by saying DeltaDNA instance record event, and the event we're recording is my game event. And let's now actually call that method after we've started the SDK. And if we jump back to public, right, so there we go. Let's get rid of all the errors before we jump back to Unity. That should be good now. So if we go back to Unity and rerun this, it should now restart. It should use the same user ID as before, but have generated a fresh session ID. It's not sent the new player event this time around because it's not a new player anymore. This is the second time this player's run the game, but it has sent the game started and client device event telling us it is starting a new session. We've not logged the fact that we've created a mission started event and sent it, but trust me, we have. What's now jump back to the platform, and we should be able to take a look and see if the event browser has got my earlier events. And you'll see I've actually got tabs here for invalid events and valid events. So if I make a mess of an event and send something that's not in the schema that we've defined, it would appear in this invalid list. And the good ones that have passed validation will appear here. So there's the three we sent first time round. There's a new player event. The game started event, we can click on here and we can drill into them and actually see what was sent in the event. So there's that client version parameter that we sent to 1.00, and we can drill into the client device event and see that I'm playing on a Windows 10 PC with 6 gig of memory. Great. If we come back in another couple of minutes, we'll see events from the last run that we've just sent, and it will have game started, client device, and the mission started event that we just triggered. They're probably not here yet, so we'll come back in a couple of minutes. I'm going to show you one other quick thing that we can do that's quite cool, just to show you how the QA works. Let's add in an additional parameter here that is not yet in our event schema. So let's add in another parameter called mission difficulty. And we'll say that the player was playing our game in easy mode. And if we rerun this again, when it sends a mission started event, it's going to contain a mission difficulty parameter. And as we'll see in a second, our event schema for this game doesn't know what the mission difficulty parameter is. So the event, I'm purposely creating an event that will fail validation at this stage. So there we go, it's uploaded the event successfully, but when the DeltaDNA platform actually processes those events, it's going to reject the one with the mission difficulty in it because it's not going to match the schema we've defined. So if we'll leave that a couple of minutes and we'll come back and look at it. While it's doing that, I'm going to show you another type of event that gets a little bit more detailed. So that was quite a simple event. It just had 3 parameters in it. Some of the events on the platform can contain quite a lot more structure to them. So let me show you a good example of this. This mission completed event has a lot more inside it. And the reason for that, like the mission started one, we are tracking the mission name and whether it's a tutorial, but we're also tracking the player getting rewarded for completing the mission. And this reward object is a common object that you'll actually see across quite a lot of DeltaDNA events. You'll see it when the player levels up, you'll see it on gifting events, etc. So this reward object is a common object, and inside that reward, you can give the reward a name, and then you can assign products. This product object is also a common thing within the DeltaDNA platform, and you'll see it in all sorts of different events too. And a product object essentially lets you gift the player or give the player, reward the player items, real currency or virtual currency. And these are arrays, so you can actually reward the player multiple different items and currencies within a single event. So let's create one of these mission completed events with a reward and some products inside it. So if we jump back to code, we'll create a new method to do the reward, to do the mission complete. So public and we're going to use the same logic. We're going to create a game event. In fact, I can even save myself some typing here. Let's just grab that whole lot and we'll reuse it, but this time round we'll say the event is called mission completed, and we're going to add in some more parameters. We're going to add in, first thing we've got to do is add in a reward object. So the way we do that, we're going to come back to here and I'm going to add a param, and this one is called reward, but it isn't just a simple string parameter. This is of type new parameters. Then inside that we want to add the reward name. So let's just step in another little bit. Add parameter demo reward, and I'm going to add another parameter which is actually going to be the product object, and this is going to be called reward products, and it's going to be of type new product. So you can actually see I'm using 2 special helper methods here, and the reward product is going to contain some virtual currency. So let's add, something's going wrong here, I've got too many dots. Add virtual currency. Now the virtual currency is going to have a name, a type and an amount. So let's say the name is gold. The type is grind, so this is my grind currency, and the amount, let's give the player 100 gold coins. Let's also give them an item. Add item, and an item can also have a name, a type and an amount. So let's say the name of the item is a sharp sword, and it's a weapon, but we're only going to give the player one of them. And that should be us. I'm getting an error there, so I suspect I've got too many or too few brackets somewhere along the line. I think that's probably me now. So let's try that and see how that gets on. This is where typing and thinking and talking all at once are not always to be recommended, but we'll give it a try and see what happens. So that's our mission completed event. The final thing we need to do is actually call that method. So now when I run the game, I should see a mission started and a mission completed event in the event browser. So let's clear this and rerun it. Okay, and that should be those events on their way. What's actually happening behind the scenes with the SDK, when you run it, it's firing those first automated events, the game started one, client device one, and the new player one if they're relevant. It will then cache any other events you tell it to record and send them at regular intervals. And by default, that regular interval is 1 minute intervals at the moment. You can, in the SDK, disable the automation of these events, and you can change the frequency of your uploads from 1 minute to something different, or you can even force the game to upload exactly when you want it to. You could turn off that automation and say, I only want you recording when I tell you, and then you can actually fire your own upload events and tell and control when the SDK is uploading. The documentation portal has got instructions and settings as to how to do all that. Do take a little bit of care though. If you don't send your events often enough, you run the risk of them, if the player drops out the event or loses connectivity, you might not get all those events until the next time they play. So be a little bit careful of what you're doing if you do start disabling automated events and automated upload behaviors. So if we jump back to the portal now and go back to the event browser tool, we should see that the first set of events we sent, the first 3 events, they'll still be there. The second time we ran the game, we should have a game started and a client device and a mission started event. And there should also be an invalid mission started event somewhere in there from when I added that mission difficulty parameter that it shouldn't yet know about. So let's see what we've got. So there's our new player game started client device. There's our second session, and there's the mission started event from the second session. And there's our third session starting. And notice, here we go, there's no mission difficulty parameter in there, but it is saying, yep, it knows it was mission 1 and it wasn't a tutorial. But if you notice here, we've got a mission started on that second session. We don't have one in the third session, and that's because the event has probably failed because of that mission difficulty. So let's go into invalid events. It's that's helpful. It's not shown up just yet, but what that would show us when it shows up, if we were to give it another couple of minutes, it'll show up and say there's an error with this event because it doesn't have a mission difficulty parameter. The way we can fix that, we could either go back into our code and rip out that mission difficulty bit. Look at all, we could always rip that out, but we want to track that. That's a useful thing. So what we're going to do, let's go into mission started, the event. We'll edit it, and within the event parameters block, we're going to add a new parameter, and this is showing us a list of all the parameters that are already in existence in my game, and I know that mission difficulty is not in that list, so we're going to have to create a brand new parameter and call it mission difficulty. The difficulty of the mission, it's a string-based parameter, and let's just let it go at that. I could assign whether I wanted that to be used as a player metric and what category of parameter this is. Well, let's say it's a gameplay parameter and it's kind of related to missions. These categorization tags just help us quickly filter things later on when we're doing analysis. So let's add that in and click on there, and you'll see it's now modified my event schema, and it's now got a mission difficulty parameter in there. It's set it as a required parameter, which means the event will fail if this is missing. We don't want that, we just want this to be an optional parameter. So I'm going to uncheck that and then save the event. So that means now if I rerun it, that mission started event with the mission difficulty parameter will pass. So I'll be perfectly happy with it. Let's just go back to the event browser and see if anything else has shown up yet. See if we can see our mission completed events. Oh, there we go, that's good. So here's, this is perfect. So this is the event browser. It's now actually got our invalid event. It's picked it up, and there was one indeed on the mission started event. It failed, and it's saying the reason was there was an unexpected key called mission difficulty. We can snoop on the actual data that was sent. And we can view a more detailed version of that same report. And what we'll see essentially is that indeed it had the mission difficulty was in there, but it wasn't expecting it. We've now fixed that on the mission started event, but the event browser tool is helpfully telling me I actually sent that in the mission completed event as well, and we haven't set up the mission completed event to accept that parameter. So I need to come back to the event browser and alter my mission completed event as well. Let's give this a second and you'll actually see the entire structure of this mission completed event. There we go. So there's the actual entire structure of that mission completed event we sent. You can see it's got the mission name, whether it's a tutorial. There's my difficulty parameter. There's the currencies I awarded, the 100 gold coins and the sharp sword. And that's what the full event actually looks like. But to make that fully work, I'm going to want to come back to Manage Events, open up my mission completed event, and now add in that additional parameter. And this time the mission difficulty parameter will be in the list now that we've added it and used it. So there we go, mission difficulty. And once again, I'm going to click on it and set it to optional rather than required. So next time we run the game, all the events we're sending will get accepted. And that's in 45 minutes with a fair bit of waffling and wandering around how to get events, how to download the SDK, create an account, add a game, download the SDK, and actually get some data flowing. And within that data, that is actually already going to show us simply that much effort will let you start running analysis on how many players are joining your game, how many installs you've got, what's the retention of those players like, how often are they playing, how long are they playing for. We're even tracking the fact that they're playing that first tutorial mission and succeeding or failing. So that's how quickly and easily you can actually start getting some meaningful data flowing into the platform. And you can even see, I said it might take up to a couple of hours, but you can see actually already on my demo account, when we started talking 20 minutes ago, there was only a couple of options in this navigation menu. The other options have now started appearing and the other tools will now start populating. So within another hour or so, I'll be able to actually start running analysis on this and creating visualizations and custom dashboards based on the fact we have a player playing our new game. And that's how simple it is to get up and running. You saw within the SDK that there was a further SDK and there, a further Unity package for smart ads. That's our smart ad mediation system. And next week there's going to be another webinar around about the same length. We'll show you how to start turning on advertising within your game and start running interstitial video ads and even rewarded ads. And that will also take around about 45 minutes. So really quick and easy to get things set up. Final thing to show you just before we kind of sign off and hand over for any questions. The help link at the top takes you to the documentation portal, as I mentioned. You just click on it and it'll swizz you over to the documentation portal. There's a ton of videos up here already. So inside this webinar gallery or under the big green panel here, there's videos on how to use all the different tools on the platform, and the video of this webinar will appear in this slot. We'll update this one in the next 24 hours or so, but there's videos on all sorts of all the different tools in there and how to get the most out of them. And I've shown you where to get to the SDK downloads and all the SDK documentation. That's under this blue panel, but there's also reference material on all the different tools on the platform in here as well. There's also support buttons. If you get stuck and need any help, just hit the support button here and you'll be able to fill out a support ticket, and one of us will get back to you and help you out, help you get you up and running. And that support functionality is also underneath this link on the portal, so you can get to us through there as well. And that's it really. That's the kind of the quick overview of how to get up and running with DeltaDNA.